From the land-grant University in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, this is the Closing Market Report. It is the 9th day of January 2026. I'm Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason. Coming up, we'll talk about the commodity markets with Mike Zuzolo. He's at globalcomresearch.com out of Atchison, Kansas. And we'll hear from Eric Snodgrass of Nutrient Ag Solutions in Daggerville about the weather forecast. If you can stay with us for our whole hour, you'll hear all of Commodity Week. If not, it's up online right now at willag.org. March corn for the day settled at $4.45 3/4. It was a 1/4 cent lower on the afternoon. May futures at $4.53 3/4, down 1/4, and December futures at $4.64, a 1/2 cent lower. March soybeans up 1 1/4, settlement price at $10.62 1/2. May $10.74 1/2, up 1 1/4, and November beans down 1 1/4 at $10.71 3/4. Bean meal futures 10 cents higher at $303.70. The bean oil up 23 cents at $50.20. That in the May contract. Hard red winter wheat futures settled at $5.30 1/4, unchanged for the March. The soft red at $5.17 1/4, down 3/4 cent. Live cattle futures in Chicago $1.55 lower. Settlement price at $233.72 1/2 for 100 pounds. Feeders were down $3.02 1/2 for the day, and lean hogs at 57 1/2 cents lower, $85.30 the trade. Mike Zuzolo joins us now from globalcomresearch.com out of Atchison, Kansas, to take a look at the closing trade at the CME Group for this week. Thanks much, Mike, for taking some time with us. Let's start with the Supreme Court. This morning it could have, but did not deliver an opinion related to the Trump tariffs. The next time that might be possible will be Wednesday of next week, if the court so chooses. Those aren't put on the docket, so they're always a surprise one way or the other, but we know when opinions might come. As you look into Monday for the USDA reports, this will be now, I think, what you would call a clean report?
Yeah, I think so, Todd. I mean, I think we've got enough things to deal with right now in the report by itself when it comes to the yields and when it comes to the winter wheat acreage base. And obviously, when it comes to what the production figures for South America could be. And on top of that, we did close out Friday, I think, with more of a weather market in South America and more of a weather market in the U.S. hard red wheat belt than we had maybe beginning the year off and kicking this week off. And that was very welcome because it seemed as though the trade, like it likes to do, it tends to pull a lot of risk premium out if there's a chance for rain. And if there's a chance for benign weather, it's a lot slower, it seems to me, to want to put that premium back in. So it's nice to see that they're a little bit more respectful of the weather ahead of the crop report. And it's nice to be able to just look at the numbers and not have to guess whether the USDA was working through the Supreme Court decision on tariffs or not. Highly unlikely it would have, but at least we don't even have to think about it at this point.
Okay, I do want to talk about wheat acreage. What are your expectations? And then if you could maybe walk us through what the wheat issues related to weather might be.
Yeah, great questions both. The trade estimates on Reuters is an average of about 32.4 all winter wheat compared to 33.1 last year. I'm a little higher than that at 33 even for all winter. I don't see a lot of decline in hard red wheat acreage base and the belt here in our part of the world. And the yields were so high in soft red wheat back in your state in Indiana, in Ohio, if you got the needed rains, 100, 110 bushel wheat in places, not far from the Illinois River, up by, Chenoa and places like that, not uncommon. And so I felt like that the soft red wheat maybe would even go up a little bit when it came to this year versus last year, especially given the nitrogen prices and what we're dealing with on the cost side and the uncertainty on the cost side too. So 33 million acres. If you would go into the average trade guess of 32.4 or below, I think that would stimulate some support in this market. But what really is at stake here is what you just asked about as far as the weather. Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas for the month of December registered about 75 to 90% below the normal level of precip in those three states. We're starting to see the winter wheat conditions deteriorate pretty dramatically in double digits in states like Nebraska. And we're starting to see a situation develop where the new CPC forecast this week looked like it was bullish for wheat, bearish for cattle. Why? Because it was dry and warm. So those are the things we're contending with.
Okay, now let's fold those numbers into what the corn expectations might be, how wheat could help to pull or hold down the price of corn, given what happens on Monday.
I had pretty shaky legs and weak knees this week between the Venezuela oil takeover and then the question mark about the Supreme Court. But I was really impressed with how the wheat and the crude were on the move in the later part of the week, both of them performing very nicely. And this would make sense because they still are tied together through the Baltic, through the Black Sea, and through the supply side question marks. Russia throwing out a hypersonic missile, Russia hitting Odessa again, and then the Iranian situation. This is all of these things are stirring up, I think, more fear and more risk premium being pushed into the wheat and the crude oil market. So we have that. And the reason I bring that up, Tom, is because we have that coming off of Friday, that we are lucky enough to see that piece of the puzzle in the outside markets support us when it comes to the supply demand report. And that was a big question mark in my mind when we got to midweek this week. So my basic point being is that if we could get a yield decline in the corn, whether the beans get a yield decline or not, the trade's okay with not getting one, I think, but I think they really want a yield decline in the corn. If you could have both a wheat weather market, supportive fundamentals on the supply demand report for wheat and corn, and then have the South American weather still out there looming as far as a drier than expected Argentina and a crop in corn that's probably getting hit right now with production losses in Argentina, that would be a good recipe for us, I think, next week.
So you're telling me the geopolitical and logistical issues related to that are supportive, at least to the marketplace, particularly for corn at the moment, especially if there is a drop in corn yield. Soybeans also will be get their final number from USDA next week. They'll put some numbers on the size of the crop, which is a big one at this point, I believe, in South America. And then CONAB would come back on, I think, the 14th with their set of numbers. What do you think of those?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think the soybeans I'm a little bit more nervous about when it comes to, I hope we get a yield decline because we do have the South American crop coming on right now. Center West Brazil's wanting to harvest soybeans and get that second crop, safrinha corn in. I think the other thing too is the downside of what we did in Venezuela as a geopolitical feature. We are still in a playbook mindset of President Reagan. We talked about this with Japan and the currency situation and the tariff situation about a month or two or five ago. What President Trump did in Venezuela is almost identical to what President Reagan did in 1986 in Latin America, actually going after international terrorism and going after drug trade specifically into some of the resources I pulled up. So we're still in that mid 1980s back to the future type mindset. The downside to that is we're probably not going to be working with China as well and when it comes to trade negotiations. So that sets us more on the defensive of needing more of a weather market coming out of South America, especially as they pull beans off. So that's kind of how I see it right now.
Hey, thanks much. I appreciate it. We'll talk with you again next week.
Thank you, Todd. Take care.
Mike Zuzolo is at globalcomresearch.com. Let's turn our attention to some muddy boots agriculture this afternoon. Alfalfa growers across the Midwest are being asked to weigh in on a growing challenge in the field after a season of heavy pest pressure and reports of insecticide failures in states like, Illinois. Researchers at the University of Minnesota and neighboring land-grant universities are launching a regional needs assessment. The goal, says U of I Extension Field Crops entomologist Nick Sider, is to determine if the alfalfa weevil, a pest with a long history of developing resistance, is adapting to current control methods.
We have a regional survey of pest management practices in alfalfa, and this is something that's being coordinated by our colleagues at University of Minnesota, but it's designed to go out throughout the Midwestern U.S. To learn more about what's going on in alfalfa, what are the major insect management challenges we're seeing, what our control procedures look like, and if we're experiencing any issues, any challenges controlling insect pests that maybe didn't used to be a challenge for us.
Ultimately, the survey serves as an essential early warning system for the industry. With insecticide failures already surfacing in states like Illinois, researchers need your input to determine if the alfalfa weevil is officially outsmarting current control methods. If you farm or advise on alfalfa, take just 5 minutes to share your experience at z.umn.edu/alfalfa pest survey, or just search alfalfa pest survey online. Your feedback is the first step in building a more resilient management plan for the 2026 growing season. Let's stay with production agriculture and money boots. This time we'll turn to precision conservation management, which is expanding its reach into southeastern Illinois with the addition of conservation specialist Kate Baker, providing free, data-driven support to help local farmers make more profitable and resilient conservation decisions. Now, PCM's primary goal is to assist farmers in their efforts to make economically viable conservation decisions based on real-life, unbiased farmer data. The program's operated by the Illinois Corn Growers Association in conjunction with University of Illinois researchers. Farmers in southeastern Illinois interested in enrolling in precision conservation management can fill out an interest form to get started and connect with Kate for personalized, data-driven support. Look for the story about Kate Baker at precisionconservation.org to learn more. Now for something a little bit different that will require some work on your part, but not much. I'm going to ask you to visit willag.org. I am a big fan of the Consumer Electronics Show, that's CES. It takes place each and every January in Las Vegas. It's been keynoted by companies like John Deere, and this year, another Illinois keynoted CES, Caterpillar. I have posted that keynote to our website, again, willag.org. You can watch the whole thing, but I thought you might be interested to hear what Joe Creed, who's the CEO of Caterpillar, had to say at the very beginning of his presentation.
Question. I wonder how many of you came to the show this morning because you're wondering, why is Caterpillar, of all the companies here on the stage keynoting CES? When most people think about CES, they think about what's on the surface, whether that's new devices that you all have in your pocket that you're going to see this week, new chips, new screens, things you can hold in your hand or download in seconds. And when most people think about Caterpillar, they think about something very different. Big yellow machines that do the hard work of building the world's infrastructure. So, to me, I think it's a fair question. Why are the big yellow machines here with the tech heavyweights? And the short answer is this. The digital world depends on a physical layer most people never think about. Every device in this room that you have depends on minerals that had to be pulled from the ground. Every data center behind the AI you're going to see this week, or you're going to hear about this week, was constructed from the ground up, and it stays online with power systems that provide reliable electricity. Every road, every port, every power line connecting our economy had to be built. That's the invisible layer of the tech stack, the physical foundation for modern technology. And that, it doesn't happen without Caterpillar.
And Joe Creed, CEO at Caterpillar, says his company is taking AI, autonomy, and analytics out of the cloud and into the physical layer at Caterpillar. And that's what he talked about at CES as he keynoted that event this week. Again, you can watch it on our website at willag.org. Let's turn our attention to the weather forecast now. Eric Snodgrass is here. He's with Nutrient Ag Solutions and Agrable. Hi, Eric. Thanks much for being with us. I think we've got a lot of ground to cover. I do want to start in the United States. It seems like we've had a really weird temperature pattern. I'm used to a January thaw, not long ones, and this one kind of has come and stuck around. We had early snows. It's been warm. It's been super cold. Just an oddball winter so far, I believe.
It is, but I mean, we're from Illinois. This is kind of how we roll, right? I mean, it's just we expect to see a lot of chaos here. But you know, it's funny you bring that up, Todd. think about it this way. A lot of times when we're thinking about our temperatures in the middle of winter, we focus on Alaska first. We just tend to get the opposite of Alaska. So every time that we've gone over very mild, Alaska's been just absolutely pounded with record-breaking cold in some places. And then have you heard about all the snow that's hit parts of Alaska, including Juneau, which typically doesn't see much snow? Have you seen any of that lately?
No.
Yeah, 80 inches of snow. 80 inches of snow, and it's going to rain on top of that very, very soon. So that's what's important to understand. When Alaska went over so cold is when we keep seeing these mild interludes, and we've had some very, very warm conditions here. If you look at the United States since the start of winter, okay, so let's start December 1, you'll notice that the northern tier of the US through the Great Lakes and off to the northeast, they're still averaging cooler than normal. So don't forget, we did have big snows around Thanksgiving. We had the big snow event in mid-December. We've already seen some Arctic temperatures get in here, but what many people are remembering is how mild it is. And the farther west you go, the more mild it's been. I looked this morning at Hays, Kansas, so this is kind of right in the middle of winter wheat territory. And since the start of the new year, okay, we're not that far in, they've already picked up over 40 GDDs. We don't talk about GDDs usually until, March and April, but that's how warm it's been out there. And I was in San Antonio 2 days ago. It's 85 degrees. And I mean, I was sweating down there. I was ready to come back. So yes, what an odd pattern. But Todd, as normal, don't get used to it. We are expecting for a channel to reopen as we approach the third week of January with more Arctic air coming out of the Canadian prairie. It's not now. We're going to be seeing mild days continue with only very brief interludes of colder weather. But there's a pretty good signal that when we get into the third and then final week of January, we're going to just find ourselves back into more Arctic air. And that's what it's going to do.
I want to talk about that cold air or maybe the rest of the winter, but I do want to have you comment on something. For instance, last night, just a driving windstorm. And it seems like we've had an awful lot of wind for this time of year. Usually something I think about more as we get into March as opposed to January.
Well, that temperature contrast we've been talking about, that's the birthplace. That is what drives wind. Okay, so changes in temperature over a distance relate to a change in density, which relates to a change in pressure. And long story short, you build up big pressure centers. And then we watched yesterday a deep low come out of Oklahoma, where it produced some tornadoes, rolled right through parts of the Illinois, and deepened as it did so. And the winds my yard. I don't know about your yard, but I have a project this weekend of cleaning up all the debris. And last night I went to the Illinois Rutgers game, and on my way out, I told my parents, like, hey, we got to go. We got to get to the car now. It's a break. We got to get there. And sure enough, we took our dear sweet time. And by the time I got to the car there in Elot, one of those driving windstorms, along with all that rain, soaked us. But, Todd, it's the winds. It was what was funny. I was walking into the rain. I was soaked completely to the bone on the front, but the entire backside of me was dry. So I sat down and was nice and dry on the backside, but completely soaked on the front. But you're right about these winds. They have been very strong this fall. And by the way, there's something neat you can do. If you always want to gauge how bad and how windy of a winter it's been, find the pin oaks and see how early in the season they lose all of their leaves. If they lose them early, you know that you're in a very, very windy time frame. If they keep them till spring, winter was relatively benign.
Interesting. Well, it's how tight they hang on, and they must hang on tight. It takes a good wind to blow those off. Rest of winter. You got us through the end of January. What's the rest of it look like?
Okay, so I've got a few years that are sticking out in my mind. And those years, the biggest one, the closest one I'm thinking about for January, February, March is 2018. So 2018 is a top analog for me, but I've also got 2009 and 2014 in the mix. And what those winters did was they were highly volatile, but when we accessed the cold air, we got it. It wasn't like it was just shallow and only lasted a couple of days. I think throughout the month of January, the end of January, and then getting into February, we are going to be able to see more clipper systems delivering more colder air. Now, that's great if you have a snowmobile and you want to go vacationing up north, but it's not the right setup to get southwest flow. Now, southwest flow is what gives us the big weather systems that can come through and just deliver rain, deliver moisture, deliver snow, big time snow. You get flood out of the northwest, they're cold, dry clippers, and as a result, we tend to not really budge our drought monitor at all going forward. And that's a concern, which means we're going to have to wait till spring rains get here in order to cure that. And by the way, Todd, those years I gave you, they were not overly wet springs. In fact, most of the years in our analog package going into this dying La Nina and this building El Nino are a bit drier in spring, which is not a bad thing as long as you get summer thunderstorms.
In South America, quick update.
Yeah. So the South Americans are paying just as close attention to this rapidly decaying La Nina. And I do mean rapidly decaying. We could be talking about our spring, their autumn already having El Nino-like conditions brewing in the atmosphere. In the near term, though, they're handling it just fine. The weather patterns are such that regions that have gone over drier, well, they're getting just-in-time rains. And areas that need to have a little bit of a drier go to get this harvest underway across parts of northern Brazil, they're going pretty quickly. The only about negative thing I've heard is that down in Paraná, there's quite a bit of interest in understanding how much southern rust is spreading, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to put any sort of a dent in the overall story, which is right now, South America is going to hit some pretty big numbers, I think, this year.
Hey, thanks much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
That's Eric Snodgrass. He's with Nutrient Ag Solutions, and Daggerable helped us to wrap up this Friday edition of the Closing Market Report that came to you from Illinois Public Media.